Tony Khan hints at talks with this top wrestling star. An agreement has seemingly been made between CM Punk and the Elite. But first, we have news on two top free agents that could be heading to WWE. According to this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter, there's been talk of the company potentially approaching former MLW star Richard Holliday, this following his recent battle and win with cancer, with him revealing earlier this month that he's entered remission. The report also revealed that WWE continue to have their eyes on a former champion of New Japan Pro-Wrestling, and it was noted, I don't know if they will be signed, but there has been talk internally in WWE of late about Richard Holliday because of the story of his beating cancer, and in Tama Tonga, who there has been talk about for some time. Tonga has been a free agent for several months at this point, although he has continued to work for New Japan on a freelance basis. Whilst WWE are seemingly in the midst of a hiring freeze right now, having not made a top of the card signing since last year, they could be set to end this drought in the months and weeks ahead. And next, AEW President Tony Khan would hold a media call yesterday ahead of this weekend's Double or Nothing pay-per-view, where he would talk all things All Elite. One of the topics that was raised was the possible brand split between AEW Dynamite and the soon-to-be introduced AEW Collision, this after mixed reports of a soft or hard brand split over recent weeks. Whilst Khan wouldn't confirm nor deny that there would be a divide amongst the talent, he would note that the goal right now is to build intrigue as to how things will shape up going forward. And he would say, I haven't given a lengthy explanation yet for what I'm planning regarding the future of the roster and how people will be allocated across Dynamite and Collision and our other shows. It's a great question, certainly. I can see why wrestling fans all over the world would be interested and curious about that. That's frankly by design, that we want to build that curiosity and get people wondering exactly what you're asking. What's the future of the AEW roster, and what does this mean going forward after Double or Nothing? It's a really good question and something that we'll be excited to follow up on. Another thing Tony Khan would be asked about was the details on the deal between AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery regarding Collision, and if this was part of an extended deal across the board that includes Dynamite and Rampage. Khan would confirm that as of now, no broader television deal has been signed with Warner, and noted that this is an add-on on top of their already existing contract, and he would say, the scope of the deal as it is, the length is the same. I don't want to go too deep into those conversations, but the length of the terms is the same, and this is an addition to what we had already put together. Everybody was really excited about the success of AEW on TBS and TNT. They reached out to us and gave us a great opportunity. I think it spoke highly of AEW that this show and the idea of more AEW programming goes all the way to the top to Mr. David Zaslav, who is one of the most powerful and intelligent in all of media. He likes what we're doing with AEW on TBS and TNT, and it was literally his idea for there to be more AEW on TNT. I'm very grateful for that. We're going to do our best to make sure Collision is a great show and also maintaining a great show with Rampage and also take Dynamite to new heights. That's a great challenge for us and we're really looking forward to it. Another topic of conversation would be that of AEW Women's World Champion Jamie Hayter and her status ahead of Double or Nothing this Sunday. Following reports that Hayter is injured ahead of the show, Khan would mention that this is something that has been mentioned on television over recent weeks, but he would add that she's not cleared for a match, which is interesting to say the least. As a follow-up to this, we have news from Fightful's After Dark review show last night, where Sean Ross Sapp would detail what he knows about the situation and would imply that this could lead to a big shift in the AEW women's division going forward, and he said, Jamie Hayter is hurt, she is hurt, and thinking that this whole division looks categorically different in 5 days. I see the winds of change coming here, and I think we are in for some major change in this division all around. You got Jamie banged up, they don't want people not being able to defend when they got 2 shows. So I've been leaning towards Tony Storm for a while. People are saying, what do you know? Nothing. I just think that based on what we're seeing here. Now let's get back to the Tony Khan Double or Nothing media scrum, where he would be asked about competition from WWE this weekend, who will host the NXT Battleground event at the exact same time as the AEW pay-per-view. Tony would insist that he is open to competition in anything he does, although he would prefer this to be ethical competition from all parties, and he would note, it's been that feeling from day one since we launched a TV show. It actually probably changed a little bit on April 14, 2021, and now with this, it feels feels like the old days in some ways. I'm always very eager to compete in whatever arena I'm in. I really love the competition in pro wrestling as long as it's done with some ethical standards. People running events at some similar times, I don't know if that's necessarily unethical. I don't have a big problem with it. I wish everybody the best, and I expect we will do the best show on Sunday. I think there will be a big audience for AEW Double or Nothing. Certainly the spirit of competition is something we've dealt with since the launch of AEW, and I have never really had any problem with it as long as it's an ethical competition, and I don't think it has always been coming from the other side. And for the final piece coming from the media call, Tony Khan would discuss a potential partnership with Stardom, who is owned by the same parent company as New Japan Pro-Wrestling, ahead of the Forbidden Door event next month, with him revealing interest in working with the ever-growing brand. Khan would admit that Stardom could help AEW going forward, and that their talent could end up appearing at the Forbidden Door show on June 25th, before referring to the recent conversations he's had with New Japan's liaison Rocky Romero. Mercedes Monet's name would then come up, with Tony being asked if her recent injury affected plans for the upcoming joint show. He would then note that only he and Monet know about any conversations between them for the June pay-per-view, a hint that talks have indeed taken place at some stage. I guess we'll now have to see how quickly she can recover, although a match feels unlikely at this point. As for her future beyond her injury, Dave Meltzer would take to this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter to reveal that she recently put pen to paper on a new deal with New Japan, and he would write, Monet had agreed to a longer-term deal with New Japan when her original deal expired on 4/27. We were told that the New Japan Strong Championship and belt were created when she agreed to the longer-term deal, and both were created for her after she showed strong drawing power for the San Jose show, which sold out the Civic Auditorium. Next up, we have news regarding the AEW return of CM Punk, which is reportedly set to take place on June 17th from the United Center in Chicago, Illinois, at the first episode of AEW Collision. According to Fightful Select, documents were signed by Punk over the past week, with an agreement now being official for the Second City Saints' second coming to take place on the show. This after a last-minute hiccup saw his name pulled from the original Collision press release. It was also noted that there's been several productive conversations over the last week between him and AEW, and all parties are seemingly aligned going forward. It was later reported by Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio that the decision was made for Ace Steel to work remotely for the time being, which was one of the problems, with there also being a clause to prevent Punk from discussing the events of AEW All Out, which saw a brawl take place backstage between Punk, Steel, and the Elite. Well, according to a fresh report from Meltzer, this time via the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Punk wasn't the only one that signed an NDA, with him revealing that Punk and Tony Khan made an agreement which involved both parties and key participants in the brawl signing NDAs, preventing them from speaking publicly about what went down. He would also confirm, as mentioned by Fightful, that everyone involved in the situation ended up on the same page. Of course, you'd have to guess that these key participants include Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, and likely Ace Steel. Right now, it certainly seems that this whole mess is starting to be left in the past for those involved, although we'll have to wait and see if this will ever lead to anything between the two sides on screen. And before you go, make sure you check out my predictions for AEW Double or Nothing 2023.